democracy, rule of law, fundamental rights, and public administration reform, the fundamentals of accession. It also, for the first time, reviews the situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina against all standards applicable to EU member states. The opinion is a milestone in EU-Bosnia and Herzegovina relations, showing that the Union is committed to supporting the country on its path towards European integration. The Council will now need to decide on the next steps for the country. In this regard, it will be key that governments are formed at all levels in Bosnia and Herzegovina without any further delay. Turning to Turkey, a key partner for the Union, dialogue and cooperation in essential areas of joint interest have continued. This includes notably effective cooperation on migration and strong EU support for Syrian refugees. However, Turkey has continued to move further away from the European Union, with continued serious backsliding in the areas of rule of law and fundamental rights, and through the weakening of effective checks and balances in the political system, brought forward by the entry into force of constitutional amendments. In June 2018, the Council noted unanimously that Turkey's accession negotiations have therefore effectively come to a standstill, and no further chapters can be considered for opening or closing. The underlying facts leading to this assessment still hold. Mr. Chairman, honourable members, as this is the last enlargement package that I will present in this House, allow me to express once again my gratitude to the many of you who worked to drive the EU enlargement agenda forward over the past 4.5 years. And may I in particular emphasize, it was not only to sit here together or in Strasbourg, but many of you have many times reached out to the countries, have been there, have talked to the people, have made up your minds on your own, and have really contributed to a lot of achievements. So I think we all can be proud together about the achievements. Of course, a lot has to be done, but what has been achieved was and is only possible of our, I believe, and I'm deeply convinced, good and excellent cooperation between the Parliament, the European Commission, and some other institutions. But in the core and the centre, I think it was our excellent cooperation and your strong commitment and engagement, because it is not only a strategic investment in the future of the region, it also, again and again, it's in the own interest of us, the European Union, to have a region part of the Union which belongs already to the Union, but of course some preconditions have to be fulfilled. So once again, thanks a lot for all what you have done, and I hope no matter if you stay, but in particular to those who are leaving the Parliament, I'm sure you are further committed and very interested, and maybe we can find ways and means to have a further exchange and cooperation, because we need each and everybody to assist, to help, to support us, to support our partner countries on our joint journey towards the European Union. Thank you very much.
Dear Johannes Hahn, let me first of all, and I can say this, I guess, on behalf of all our members in this committee, thank you for your outstanding work on enlargement and neighbourhood policy, and also personally for the excellent cooperation with this committee. Thank you so much, Johannes.
Yeah.
We have now 35 minutes, time to have a Q&A session. Amel has this very complicated formula: who's allowed to speak and how long. It's coordinators 2 minutes each, but if there's a combined role as coordinator and rapporteur, you even get 3 minutes. So I have to be so strict today, so we start. And this is his last AFET meeting too, the one and only Christian Dan Preda, who's not only coordinator but also rapporteur for Bosnia and Herzegovina. 3 minutes.
Merci. Il fallait passer.
Thank you very much. I had to spend 10 years here to get 3 minutes. But it's okay, don't worry. So first of all, I would like to welcome the adoption of the enlargement package today. even though there is a slightly modified timetable as a result of the European elections, I do hope that in general the pro-European majority that we have in the Parliament will continue with the European route for the Western Balkans, as we have done in the past. I think that this committee, over the past 10 years, has been constantly in favour of that. We try to find the best possible way to support each of the countries and the pro-European forces there to help move things forwards, even in difficult times. And I think that if we do not continue in that way, it will be difficult to maintain our credibility, the credibility of the EU. And I think in that context, in the June Council, it's important that the decision to open negotiations with Albania and North Macedonia needs to be adopted. I think that's what we need. We asked for things to be done a year ago. They have taken those steps, and now we need to confirm the quality of the work that they have done. As a rapporteur for Bosnia and Herzegovina, I am pleased to see the publication of the measures relating to this country. I think this corresponds to the analysis that we have. When I started 5 years ago on Bosnia and Herzegovina, it wasn't a candidate, and it was difficult to get the request submitted, but now we have a positive opinion from the Commission on their candidacy, and I do hope once again that in the Council people will look at what is happening and understand the importance of this for the country and recognize the candidacy of that country. Now, of course, we will need some time to digest the analysis which the Commission has presented, but I do welcome the clear fact that Bosnia and Herzegovina is on a European route, and there is already greater clarity on that route. And the Commission, as the Commissioner has just said, has identified priorities in terms of rule of law, democracy, and the reforms. Now, of course, the ball will be in the court of the Bosnian and Herzegovinian authorities, and but the speed at which in which they respond to all of the pending issues will determine the timetable. And perhaps I could just conclude, dear Johannes, by thanking you for all of your work, and all the best for the future.
Merci, Christian Preda. I now give the floor for the SND to Kati Piri, who will speak for the group, and she's also rapporteur for Turkey. 3 minutes.
Thank you. Dear Commissioner Hahn, dear colleagues. I'm today replacing S&D coordinator Knut Fleckenstein, and as this is the last outgoing meeting of AFET while the new members of parliament have been elected, I think it is also important to mark that the S&D group is a fierce supporter of the enlargement process, which is of common interest to both the EU and the candidate countries. While the EU needs to stick to the promises it made, it is also a merit-based process. Each individual candidate must be evaluated based on the reforms it has conducted. And also in the new parliamentary legislature, my group will continue to support EU enlargement, but of course the pace will depend on the candidate countries themselves. We have seen some serious successes in the last 5 years, most notably the Prespa agreement, which solved the long name dispute between Greece and North Macedonia. This has again proved that the diplomatic process is the right way forward. In June, EU heads of state and government are expected to make a decision on whether to start accession negotiations with North Macedonia and Albania. My group hopes that the decision will be positive for both countries. However, I personally would have preferred if the Commission had not put this forward as a package deal, as that runs contrary to the fact that each country must be evaluated on its own merits. Having said that, the S&D sees no reason for further delaying the decision, as the criteria set for both countries are met. I hope this will also encourage Bosnia and Herzegovina and Kosovo to engage in further serious reforms so that it would be possible in the upcoming parliamentary term to grant candidate status to all Western Balkan countries. For Montenegro and Serbia, the pace of negotiations depends, of course, on their willingness to continue the reform process. Overall, I think it's also important to pay attention to the shrinking space of civil society and independent media in the region and to listen to the voices of peaceful demonstrators. And finally, on the Western Balkans, it is important that the EU continues to facilitate the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue and finalize a legally binding agreement on comprehensive normalization between Serbia and Kosovo, covering all outstanding issues. Then some words on Turkey. I haven't had yet time to read the report, but I hope the Commission in its new report has not only written down all the facts, but also articulated a strategy on how to move forward in EU-Turkey relations. The position of the European Parliament is clear. Continuing talks on accession with this government, according to us, makes no sense. But at the same time, we must use all tools to our availability to stand in solidarity with the Turkish population in difficult times. We hear these days allegations about tortures in Turkish prison. We hear that the Kurdish activists have stopped their hunger strikes. How can we put, again, the peace agreement, the peace negotiations back on the agenda? And finally, we saw that even the last pillar of Turkey's democracy, free and fair elections, have been heavily pressured with the controversial decision to rerun the Istanbul mayoral elections. As a final word, my group will put forward a request to the Conference of Presidents to exceptionally send the EP monitoring mission to Istanbul for the 23rd of June. I hope the other groups can agree with this request, and I would like to thank Commissioner Hahn for the excellent cooperation during the last 5 years, and good luck for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Kati Piri. I now give the floor to Charles Tannock, who's not only the coordinator, but of course also our rapporteur for Montenegro. 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Given that this will be my last intervention on the Foreign Affairs Committee, I'm delighted it's to do with the issue of enlargement. As the rapporteur for Montenegro for the last decade, I welcome your positive comments, Commissioner Hahn, on the country's progress. With just one remaining chapter left to open, the chapter concerning competition policy, I trust that the Commission is now focusing its attention on how to phase the closing of chapters and how that can be progressed. But of course, I fully take on board the need to prioritise the law and order issue, the rule of law issue in chapters 23 and 24. In your 2018 enlargement package, you recommended that the Council open negotiations with the accession candidate countries of Albania and North Macedonia. With the passing of the Prespa Agreement, for which I was proud to co-sign a letter with fellow MEPs nominating Prime Ministers Zaev and Tsipras for the Nobel Peace Prize, there seems to be nothing now standing in the way for the Council, in the case of North Macedonia, to allow the opening of negotiations. And I hope we will see some movement on this by the end of 2019. Such reluctance to progress these negotiations highlights a wider issue concerning the entire enlargement agenda. It cannot be seen, in my view, as a choice. It must be understood to be a necessity and an inevitability. As negotiations among EU leaders to shape the new Commission begin, there is strong emphasis from many on the need to reinvigorate the EU and defend its purpose. If this is to be achieved, there must be an unequivocal stance that the EU is for all Europeans, that any country that wishes to join has a place and a path. On a final note, I would like to raise the issue of EPA funding, as I was one of the shadow rapporteurs for EPA 3, which was passed in its first draft by the Parliament in April. Obviously, it will be for the new Parliament, however, to negotiate the final settlement with the Council in the coming year. I hope that this can be an opportunity for all sides to demonstrate their strong commitments to the enlargement agenda. Can I also take this opportunity to thank all colleagues, and particularly officials, for their incredible help and support over my 18 years as a member of this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles, for your contribution and the excellent work in the last years in this committee. I now give the floor to Edward Kukan for 2 minutes. He is the chair of the working group in the Western Balkans and also chairs the Serbia delegation. And I think it's also your last.